Good morning and welcome to Smart Social Secrets Tips. Wherever you're watching this, I hope that you're having a fantastic day. Today, we're going to be talking about decision making. And the reason I'm doing this series, I had Ken Jacobs on in my last live, and I had him on to talk about thought leadership and leadership inside of your team, inside of your business. And now I'm going to be talking about decision making. And usually I talk about social media and I talk about marketing and all of those cool things. But the reason I'm digging into this is for two reasons. Number one, got to pull this closer to me. Probably can hear me better if I do that. Um, Number one, I want to make sure that we are heading into this new year with all of the tools available to us to have the best results, including with our marketing, including with our social media, including with everything that we do. If you're building a brand for yourself, if you're doing all of those things, you're going to need to understand this concept. So let me rewind and tell you why I came up with this. I was trolling around the internet as you do, as one does, and I was looking at different kinds of ideas, and I ran across a UC Davis paper about values based decision making. And I opened it up and it just took me back. It took me back all the way to 2000, around 2002, when I got married to my husband. And I moved all the way across the country from DC to San Antonio. It was a really scary move for me. I was going from being a employed person working as a director of communications to trying to make a decision. Am I going to get a new job? Am I going to do, am I going to start my own business? What am I going to do? And it was a really big decision to me at the time. And I felt really conflicted by it. And also because I was also making a decision to get married and move across the country, everything was a sort of an array, disarray, I'd say. And so that is sort of where I come at from this decision making thing. And so as I did this, my husband was and always has been a really big reader. He reads a lot of books and he does a lot of things. And he brought me this book. I want you to see it right now. I have the actual link to it in the description for this video. But this book is what he brought me. And this is called Values Focused Thinking by Ralph Keeney. I think you say Keeney. Anyway, so by Ralph Keeney. And this was 2009-ish when he brought me this book. And and he and I sat down. And he goes, we were trying to make some decisions too about our life. Should we buy a house? Should we build a house? Should we what should we do? And so he brought me this book and we started to make all of our decisions for our family based on this concept. And so I wanted to rewind real quick because here we are, or, fast forward if you want to say, to now when, we've been doing this kind of planning and thinking for our family for decades at this point. We're getting there. And so I just feel like it actually has paid off in dividends. So I wanted to share with you a little bit what we did and also how I think that it impacts your business or your career. So again, let me go through the points for you. And then I have a few stories to tell you. And then I would love to have any of your questions or thoughts on this, especially if you're feeling stuck, if you're feeling like you have to make some decisions about things personally or professionally. And by the way, this is great work too for those of you who own a business because own or have to run a business because having this framework in place for making decisions for the business makes all the difference. It makes all the difference in if this business is going to serve you and be where you need it to be. Okay, great. So that being said, I want to let me open this back up again and give you guys these tips. They're not really tips, they're actually a framework. Let me give you this framework because I think you're going to really love it. All right, let's get this open here. It's taking its time. It's also like trying to quit. Did you know that January 12th is considered Quitter's Day? So any goals you made, any New Year's resolutions, most people have quit them by January 12th. And here we are at the recording of this video, January 18th. So I wanted to also give you guys hope. You don't need to have all those resolutions. You just need to have this framework. All right, here we go. So let me make it so you can actually see it. So the values-based decisions are based on these four things. You define the decision, and there's a difference between problem and opportunity, and I'll talk about that in just a second. Then you identify your values, and I'll tell you what that means. It's, we all have values, things we want to have, but this is very specific to how this works. You create some alternatives. This is a really important part of the process, probably the most important part. And then you get the buy in from people that also are impacted by your decisions. So if you're married, maybe a spouse, if it's a personal decision. If you are in a business, maybe it's your boss. If you are owning a business, maybe it's the buy in of actually the people who have to do the work. So those are the things that you want to do. So I want to talk about each one of these one by one. So the first one is defining the decision. And there are two types of decisions. One is what I call, or what Keeney calls, it's actually Keeney's work. He calls a problem decision or an opportunity decision. So the difference between these is that a problem decision is when something happens to you, like, they lay you off. So a lot of people I know started their business because they got laid off from their work. And so many people will say, oh, they only started their business because they didn't or couldn't find a job. But many times that is an inflection point where people make a decision based on something maybe they've wanted for a long time or values. So that's how that goes. And then the opportunity decision is when you look around you and you make changes or decisions to make a better state, or to take your business to a better state, to like, say maybe you're in a job and you are perfectly fine in that job. You're not getting fired. Nothing's happening anytime soon, but you're ready to make a change in your life. So I know people too that have started their business because they were just ready to do something bigger and something that was more in line with their values. So that's the two different states. None of them, there's nothing wrong with either one of them. Just many people often avoid making decisions unless they're presented with them. So often we're reactive when we're making decisions. I always say, especially with crisis communication, respond, don't react. Because when you react to something, you always are going to go with maybe not the optimal decision. You may go with the first thing that comes to your mind. So that brings you to the second point, which is identifying your values. I didn't put this in the links because I should have, but I did like the UC Davis um, spreadsheet, or it's just a couple of pages, but it's very easy. So number one, what are your values based on the decision? So say you are looking at, like I was, moving all the way across the country, and do I have it? Do I start a business? Do I do a new job? So what did I do in that case? I thought about my values. I was newly married. I was 32 years old. I was a little bit older bride. And I knew we wanted to have children. So I knew that within a couple of years, I would have children if we could. And we'd also made some decisions around that too. So I had also decided, because I was 32, and in case I couldn't get pregnant, that we would adopt if that was the case. And it didn't end up that I needed to adopt, but we made these decisions before we actually got there based on our values. So I knew I didn't want to do a lot of, like, intervention with my body to try to make myself be pregnant, because there's so many children that need homes and so on. So there's a lot of decisions we made based on this, based on values. So our values were based on the decision. So my values for starting the business were, I knew I needed to have flexibility in my schedule because I was going to have children, and I didn't want to just leave them with a nanny and go. I mean, that was never a thing for me. I wanted to be with my kids. I wanted to make sure that I could take them to school, pick them up, do all those things. And so I thought that working from home would be great. Number two, I had my second value was that I wanted to make sure that I had some meaningful work. I wanted meaningful work that I like to do. And so, that was interesting. So I was like, okay, I'll have a lot more, control over that if I'm working out, like if I'm working. And by the way, some of that didn't turn out exactly like I thought, because when you start a business, you don't always get exactly the kind of work you want. So I had to work through that too. But that was a value. The third value was that I wanted to be able to grow in the community where I was at. And I figured that as a business owner, I would have more opportunities to grow inside inside that community. So those were a couple of things that I had on my plate that I was making decisions about. The other thing that we decided almost immediately was that we would live off of one income and not two incomes. So I knew that that gave me freedom to start the business without fear and stress and pressure that I had to make a bunch of money right away in order to support myself. So that was one of the things that went into the values that went into the decision making. So that's identifying your values. It's like looking at the decision you're about to make and saying, to what end? What do I want to do? One of the ones he had in the book, which I thought was really, really powerful, was a woman who had lost her job because her company moved to another state. I know that happens a lot now. So I thought I'd bring it up. So that her company had moved to another state. And so, of course, she decided she wanted to stay where she was at, which was happened to be in Seattle at the time. And she wanted to stay in Seattle. And so she did not have a job. So suddenly she had no job. So she, as we do, opened up, all of the different tools and looked for jobs that were available and started to apply. Well, she ended up having some interviews and she didn't get the job. So that's how she did the first round. But then when she put this process into place, she started to think about, what kind of company do I want to work for? What kind of work do I want to do? So instead of getting desperate because she didn't get the first job that she tried to get, right? She went out and she started to make a list of companies where she felt like she would fit in there. And then she reached out to different people through her network and so on, and had informational sessions with people at those companies. And then guess what? She ended up with like 4 or 5 job interviews and 2 offers, and she was able to make a choice. So that is like the difference between responding and reacting. Like, especially after you go through a whole round of trying to get a job and you don't get one, that can be really scary and frustrating. And you could see her, possibly like, panicking and just taking whatever she could get, right? Working at McDonald's, right? So you want to think about that. And and I've been thinking about that a lot with my business too, because Zoetica is my agency. What kind of clients do we want? Who do we want to work with? What do we want to do? And I'll show you some of the stuff that we have done. My team and I, about 2 years ago, we came up with a list of values for the company, and they've driven like my decision making ever since. And so I'll show you those values that we came up with. And by the way, it reminded me too that I need to bring that back into my business every year as well. So we're going to be having a meeting about that too on my team. So there's just a lot of things that you have to think about, but those values are critical, and they are based on, I mean, you have life values. That's great. Your family, your friends, your religion, all that. But I'm talking about values based on this particular decision that you have to make. So if you're feeling stuck about a decision, that's really important. Okay, then the third thing that you have to do, which is also super important, is that after you start to identify your values and you know what problem or opportunity is in front of you, then you need to create alternatives. So we tend to go with, we think of a solution and we tend to go with just good enough. Like, okay, that's a good enough solution. That sounds good. And then you just go after that solution. But the truth is that you might have much better luck with things if you sit down and you create alternatives. So, like this woman that I told you that had the job, instead of just going out and throwing out her resume to more people and like just doing that, she decided to create alternatives by making a list, going out, talking to people, figuring out what was going to be next for her. So she took that power back. So when you create more alternatives, you can take that power back. And if you have 10, go from like 2 to 10 alternatives, you may find that you'll have much better options in there, and you can get rid of the ones that don't seem like they're going to be working and go with the ones that are more optimal for your decision. So that was one of the things that Keeney talks about a lot in his book, is that creating alternatives is how important that is. And then the fourth thing is creating buy-in. And buy-in is with the people that matter to the decision you're making. So for example, the woman who was trying to get a job, she had to get buy-in from the companies that she had on her list. She couldn't just waltz in there and say, hire me, right? So she had to get buy-in from those people. But say there's something you want to do for your job. Say there's something that you want to manage, like you want to do something a little bit different. Think about the values of the person that you're trying to get their buy-in. And then structure your alternatives to include the values of the person that you're trying to, get in touch with. So let me give you an example. My husband, again, he is what I call an initial no person. Like I would ask him a question early in our marriage, like say, what do you think about this? Like, what do you think we should do about this? And his first thing would be, I don't think we should do that. So, one of the things that I realized really early on in the marriage, after we've talked about all these things, is that I stop and say, okay, I'm thinking about this idea, da 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 da. And then talking about how it might benefit us, how might it benefit him. And then I say, but please don't answer now. I'd like you to think about it for a little while and come back if you have any other alternatives. And that, by the way, has made all the difference, like in that particular conversation. We don't get just initial no anymore. And I think that is sometimes how it is with a boss. Bosses are busy, we are overwhelmed, and people say, should we should do this and we should do that, and you're thinking, oh my gosh, just another thing to do. And so what you want to hear from an employee or a child, anybody, is like, how is this going to benefit the family, how's this going to benefit the business, and what is it you want to do? And so I think that's really, really powerful if you keep that in mind. And it sounds like common sense, but so often we don't do it. We just don't do it. We come in, and I hear it all the time, people that go in and complain, and bosses. I had a boss early on in my career who was amazing. His name is Chris Steinbert. If you ever see this, Chris, you're amazing. And one of the things that he brought me in to talk about when he first took over at the trade association that I was working for in Washington, D.C., is he brought everybody in and he had, one-on-one conversations with us about how things could get better and like what kinds of suggestions that we had. And one of the things that he taught me very early on is, don't just come with a complaint, come with a possible solution as well. And that, my friends, has changed everything for me. So I don't come towards problems just complaining about the problem. I always think about what solution is there in my that I have in mind, and how can I implement it, and how can I bring it to that idea. So it's the same thing with clients. Whenever you are having issues with what you're doing with them or whatever, you need to come not just with a complaint or a concern, but also with some ideas for fixing that concern. So thank you, Chris Steinberg, for doing that for me. But it's also part of what I really believe is the Keeney method here, which is those creating those alternatives. That is something that you've got to practice to get good at. It's just so easy for us to go with whatever's good. I mean, we do it a lot. We have a lot of impulse buying decisions. Think about it, going out and buying a car, buying it because you just like the way it looks or the way it smells. But, is it going to do what you want it to do? Why are you buying a car? To what end? Is I love that words. Uh, Always ask yourself, to what end am I making this decision? And then take that and put it in there. So that is sort of where I'm at with that. I would love to hear what you guys have to say about what you think about it, but I would recommend, honestly, that you think about buying the Keeney book. The one I showed you was the one that was from 2009, but he's written one since. And I will show you the two that he has. I've put both of the links in the description upstairs and or downstairs, wherever you are. These are the two. The values focused thinking was the one that I read early on and made all kinds of plans with my husband. Ours was really around retirement and the way we were going to live our lives financially. And by the way, that is paid off in spades in our life, in our lifestyle, in our abilities. I mean, we're much closer to retirement now. We're in our 50s, so like we're getting closer. And so it's just nice to see that it's all coming together based on this plan back then. And then Give Yourself a Nudge is the newer book. And I bought this book and downloaded it onto my Kindle and been reading it over the last couple of weeks. So I think this would be something that you should also do, because this particular skill is going to pay off in dividends over and over and over. And by the way, you can use it for all kinds of decision making. So for example, if you ask me, where should I, be focusing my social media strategy for my business? Well, I would walk you through these same 4 steps. I'd be like, okay, what is the problem and opportunity? Like basically, who is it that you're trying to reach? And then the second thing is your values, like to what end? What do you want to get out of it for yourself? And what do you want to give or get? And Keeney talks about this too. It's a give and get. So what do you want to give to the market, and what do you want to get for yourself? And you want to have both of those things in mind, because you're trying to get somebody to make a decision to work with you. And if that's the case, you need to be thinking very much about what their values are. That's so important. That step, that buy-in step is so important, which is the fourth one. That buy-in step is so important for you to get people to trust you and bring you in as somebody that they're going to use for their marketing or social media or whatever you do in your business. For me, that's what I do. That's why I said that. So those 4 steps are really important in almost everything you do. Also for if you're finding out who your values are, who your problem or opportunity is, who your customer is, then you're going to know exactly which social media channel to sit on, because you know that's where they are and that's where they are solving their problems. So that is really critical too. So you can use this for almost everything. And by the way, on the back end, when you're doing the analysis, part of it, there you may have to work with professionals. Like, so for financial management, you would probably have a financial manager, to a financial management person to help you with that. So it's not that you have to do all of this by yourself, but you can start on your personal life, because that's a good place to practice. That's a place where you can make those decisions and nobody's going to be standing over your shoulder like, did you get that, report out, all that. So I do believe that he does that nudge, which Keeney has that nudge in his book. He has that as a values based process and for your own personal self. And he says, start with your personal life, because then you can take it into every other part of your life once you have the skill down. And it's not that some people are better at this than others, it's that you can do it too. Anybody can do it. So I hope in 2024 that this helps you to bring up your skills of decision making, and it helps you to make much better decisions. If you have any questions, please let me know. Leave me a comment. I see a few of you out there, so I know you're there. So leave me a comment and let me know if this helped you or not. Do you think this is something that you're going to put in place? Are you going to try to do this yourself? I would love to hear what you're planning on doing. My Smart Social Mastery group that is meeting every week, pretty much, we've been talking about these kind of goal setting things. What kind of goals are you setting? How are you setting them? Are you doing it based on your values? Are you not? By the way, there's one other story as I leave you. When I was in San Antonio still, and my husband and I had already gone through this process for our own personal finances in our life, I was working with a person that is in politics, and he was a politician, and he was trying to get his staff to kind of get their communications in order and be focused on the values that he had for his campaign and for running his business, or running his government side of things. And so he hired me to come in and work with them to align all of their goals around their values. And so we did a process where we stood around with whiteboards and everything, and we wrote out all the values. And then underneath each value for the business, oh, I was going to tell you, I was going to share my values. I'll do that. Under each value for the business, they wrote out what tasks they were doing that supported that value. It was really, really powerful. So we had all the values across the wall, and then they talked about the things that they were putting together for that, the kinds of projects they were doing, and everything rolled up underneath the values. That made a lot of sense, especially for a political person, right? That made sense. And so, yeah, that was a really great opportunity. And so, one of the things that I'm going to share with you real quick, because I promised you I would, I forgot I did that at the beginning, is that we created ours as well for our business. So, I recommend that if you do have a company, that you also do something like this, do it with your team. We got together and did it together. I have to make that bigger so you can really see it. So this is our customer promise. We started with results oriented. We get results for you by setting values based goals together and adjusting as needed. So there you go. Customer centric. We act as an extension of your staff, treating your business as if it's our own. And then community minded, because community is a big value for me. We work to build a community of highly engaged customers for our clients and for ourselves. So results oriented for them, like we get results for you. Number two, we're customer centric. Number three, we're community minded. Our mission is to help impact focused companies grow by leveraging social media to find and nurture a community of highly engaged customers. So that was our deal. And then our value statement is that we're a collaborative group of leaders who take ownership and initiative with our coworkers and clients. We're flexible learners who work to educate ourselves and stay on the cutting edge of our industry. We're problem solvers who look for creative solutions to our clients' challenges. We are inclusive of people with differing values and life experiences, always looking for ways to bring people together. So the values and this whole part right here is like forward leaning. Like I can put it on our website, we can have it everywhere. And then our values This is really inside of our business, like with each other. So we are our values are leadership. We take it, I call us Zoeticans because we're Zoetica, so we're Zoeticans, take ownership of their work and take initiative with coworkers and clients as if it were their own business. So we treat our customers like it's our own business. And then collaborative, even though we're independent. One of the things that's interesting about our agency is forever, for as long as I've had one, we've been remote. So we all work from home. We all are very independent. But we don't go it alone. They work together and communicate with their peers. We take care of each other. And we do that all the time. So flexible. Zoeticans are quick to make adjustments with our clients, coworkers, and ourselves because things happen and we have each other's backs. Lifelong learners. Zoeticans have great attitude and are open to new things. We learn new things. We're problem solvers. We are always looking for creative solutions and we're intentionally inclusive. We're respectful of people who have different values and life experiences. And we make sure that diversity is found in our company products and services. So that is the values for my company. And, what are the values for yours? So that's the deal. So we sat down as a group and we talked through all of these values. I had some that I put out there, and then they shaped them with me, and then we had them there. And we need to review them. I realized today that we haven't reviewed them in a long time, like since about a year and a half, and so we need to do it again. So you always have to keep coming back to it to remind yourself because you kind of can just get into that day to day shift. So create your own values for your own company, for your own personal life. So those could be your lives, and look at the opportunities and problems that are before you and make decisions based on values, based on the values you have. And it doesn't mean, like religious values, it can be, but I'm just saying that's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about knowing what end you're doing something and understanding that. And by the way, that's how I work with crisis communication too. When we're making decisions about how to handle a big crisis for a company or a customer, I always take into mind, who are we impacting? What values do we want to show in this business? We are not reactive. We don't react and be like, get all upset, the people, the Karens of the world, the people that get upset because something happened to them. We understand that something is happening and how do we navigate through it so that everybody gets what they want as best as possible. And so it's a lot of ways that you can use this. I love, love, love this method. And sometimes I take it for granted because I've been using it for so long. I kind of forget, that it's a thing. And so that's why when I came across this worksheet and it reminded me of the book, and then I went back to the book, and then I realized that Keeney had a new book. And by the way, both links are in the description of the. Yeah. So please, go over Amazon or wherever and grab the nuggets I think that you would really, really. That's it. And that's it. I had a little bit of a glitch out. So hopefully you guys have a great day, and I will talk to you next week. We will be back for another episode. Take care. Bye.